The 2023 NHL Draft in Nashville is now officially in the books, and the Nashville Predators walk away with 11 picks. So how did Barry Trotz do in his first draft as GM? We'll break it down today on the Locked On Predators podcast.
Your Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making the Locked On Predators podcast your first listen of the day every single day. We are your free daily Nashville Predators podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Nick Morgan. I am a writer at Penalty Box Radio, and I have a partner in crime.
You do. I'm Ann Kimmel. I'm a writer at InsideThePreds.com.
So I want to give a shout out to our loyal Locked On Pred heads, the everydayers who tune into us every single day. You've developed your own wave.
You know what? It's not a normal wave. I don't know why I do it that way, but it's just like a little like, hey.
It sounds like you're cowering in fear of.
Not afraid at all. Like, hey, glad you're all here for the party. It's more of that.
Good. So if you see that, she's not cowering in fear. She is
not afraid.
Hi.
Love you.
Also want to mention today's episode brought to you by eBay Motors. A championship team is all about bringing a perfect fit. It's the same with your vehicle. So for parts that fit, head to eBay Motors and look for the green check. Stay in the game with eBay Guaranteed Fit at ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only and exclusions apply. Well, the NHL Draft has come and gone. A big week in Smashville, and you and I were both there. This is kind of our first big NHL event experience that either of us have had to cover. Thoughts?
I thought it was so fun. I thought it was a little chaotic, which is just the nature of the beast. It's, not necessarily a result of poor planning. It's a lot happening all at once, all the time, especially day 2 of the draft. But yeah, I think it was so fun. I'm so glad we got to cover it together, especially the red carpet before the awards, because you and I had such a great time on that red carpet. We really did. And we became best friends with Jelly Roll. So that was
nice. Did. Yeah. And that's the highlight of the entire weekend right there. Let's treat ourselves a little bit. One word, and to describe your experience at NHL Draft / NHL Awards weekend.
So my one word is Black Friday. And let me put context in it, because otherwise it sounds like we're purchasing people, and that's not what we're doing at the NHL Draft. But for me, it just had a Black Friday vibe, in the sense that there is this level of excitement. There is this level of, I don't know what we're going to find. There is this level of, this could be so great. Mm-hmm. There's also just a vibe of just like a holiday vibe. When you go Black Friday shopping, there's the Christmas music and the stores are decorated, and the NHL just sort of had that vibe everywhere we were for the draft. There just were things that made you remember why you loved hockey. And so for me, it was very Black Friday. It was very festive. It also reminded me of one particular Black Friday where my husband made my dad and I go with him to buy iPads for our 3 kids, because you could only get 1 iPad per person. And my dad had just had a heart procedure, and I had just had surgery. And we got yelled at running through the parking lot because we weren't fast enough. And my husband called us the B team and was frustrated. So there were moments where I felt very much like maybe the B team on Black Friday. But overall, I thought it was just a really fun environment. It was a lot going on. It was a lot of excitement. So it was very Black Friday for me. What about you? What's your one word?
For me, my one word is curtain. Because it feels like we got to look behind the curtain. As a hockey fan, you always watch the NHL Draft. You always hear sound bites and stuff like that. But this was a good chance to kind of see behind the scenes on how some of these things work. We saw the NHL awards, and we've seen those on TV a bunch, but we've never been there or kind of seen it's having fun, and between commercial breaks, and Paul McCann, who did a great job of keeping the crowd entertained. There's 1 minute remaining in the commercial break, in his text mark Paul McCann voice.
Yes.
I think like the surreal moment was walking backstage, in the media room, and between next to the media room is where all the all the award winners came out and did their interviews and stuff. It was also turned out to be right next to the stage, and we look, and there's like a push cart pallet, like one of those like things you see at Home Depot, that just had every single one of the NHL awards on it. And it's like, this is what they do, like when it's a commercial break, just a pallet of awards, and there'd be like the guy one at a time with the gloves that come out, and it's like, okay, yeah.
Didn't it make you wonder, is the Stanley Cup ever left alone like that on a pallet? Because they never show the Stanley Cup without a companion in white gloves, and it's like, has the Stanley Cup ever sat on a pallet cart?
No, Stanley Cup is like hanging out like in a limo, like backstage.
Yeah.
Picture little sunglasses around the bowl and champagne popping and everything.
Yeah, but bless the Vezina and the Selkie, and just sitting there.
Yeah. But then, we get to the draft, and, the first round, it had some chance to be backstage, had some chance to be like in the crowd, and, just kind of, sitting there, and, being in the crowd when they learn like the first couple picks, like the audible gasps that were around me when the Leo Carlson pick came in, and, kind of being in that atmosphere, and, like hearing like the draft interviews on the Jumbotron and all that kind of stuff, and hearing the roll calls. I can't remember which team it was on day one, but had like the roll call. And they didn't answer it. And like the NHL was like team roll call. And like everybody started like booing, and, just kind of fun stuff like that.
Yeah.
Day two was much crazier. Those picks were flying left and right. But, it was just kind of, an overall cool experience to be a part of. And, we see drafts on TV all the time. And, this is kind of our first chance to, actually kind of be there in person and see how it goes.
It was really cool. I loved the opportunity to hear from the draftees right after it happened. These young men, they've worked very, very hard. Their families have invested so much time and energy and care into these young men. Y'all, these are young men. And to get to hear from them and to see what that moment means for them was really amazing. You and I were kind of laughing, and I'm not going to remember which pick this was, but it was kind of towards the later rounds of day two. And one of the picks came out and answered questions, and he was so animated and so excited about the Predators having drafted him, and wrapped up, the media time. And they said, okay, everybody, thank you. And we were kind of finishing up, and you just hear him go, sweet.
Oh, that was MacKinnon.
Was that MacKinnon?
That was MacKinnon. Yeah.
Sweet. And I'm like, you know what, buddy? Yes, it is. And I can't remember who posted the video of the mom seeing her son after he had finished doing the media, and that hug. And it it was just amazing to witness some really cool moments. So it was a great experience.
Yeah. And it was crazy. We went outside, like when we were kind of done with media and everything, and there's just like, little like kids that look like little kids, and they're wearing like the Philadelphia Flyers jersey with their name on the back and their hat, and, they're posing with their families. And, it's crazy. Like just seeing like, what looks like some like teenager walking down the street, and he's got, his draft on and his suit pants, and, just kind of like seeing like, you're able to kind of pass by and be like, hey, congrats, man.
Yeah.
Like that kind of thing. There is like, if you were a team and you just showed up wearing like, a team's jersey and started walking around Bridgestone Arena, like with suit pants on and a nice haircut and everything, there would be no way anybody knows you're just some guy in the crowd. We started like you and I started talking about this. Like we need to get like your son Cal, get him get him just like a random team's jersey and draft hat and just like bring him like backstage and see like what happens. Like him walking around in like a Buffalo Sabres jersey and hat or something like that and see like how many people notice him. Like he would run into an actual Buffalo Sabres like draft pick who would be like, excited, man.
Yeah, look at we did it. Yeah, I know we talked about that and it would have been so funny because y'all, these are 17, 18-year-old kids walking around, just this incredible experience. So yeah, we did talk about the fact that we could have smuggled Cal Henry in and I don't know that anyone would have known because Cal Henry looks like a draftee from the NHL. Like they're just 17, 18-year-old kids who worked hard in their, they did work really hard to get there. But yeah, it was fun.
Yep. And congrats to all the draft picks who did get picked because this is a very special day, I am sure. Let's go to the Nashville Predators picks because they made some noise with a couple of selections.
Yeah.
A couple of good sound bites that came out when we were talking to them. So a lot to get to here. We're looking forward to talking about that in just a second. But first, I want to mention today's episode is brought to you by Athletic Greens and their product AG1. Folks, all of us want to be healthy, want to eat healthy. Not all of us want to pay all of the money that goes in to being healthy. You got to buy all those protein powders and vitamins and supplements and what have you. And then after a few $200 bills, it's like, not exactly worth it. That's where AG1 comes in handy. AG1 is just one scoop of powder in a glass of water every day, and you are absorbing 75 high-quality ingredients that give you the daily nutrients to support your energy, focus, strength, and clarity. It is a micro habit that delivers macro benefits and helps just about everybody take care of their health every single day. We mentioned the price and having to buy all those different supplements yourself. AG1 is just less than $3 a day, which is pretty good if you ask me, and better than a cheaper coffee habit. And it is a easier way to get all of the vitamins you need. It's a comprehensive solution. That's what you need from your supplement routine. And if you need to try it, give it a try. Go to AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase. If you want to get it, you have to go to drinkag1.com/NHL network. Again, drinkag1.com/NHL network. Check it out. All right, Ann, we are talking about the Predators in the 2023 NHL Draft. 11 picks overall. What do you think of the draft class for the Nashville Predators, Ann?
You know what? I think it's a really interesting mix. It feels like the Predators they kind of went off the beaten path. Not necessarily as far as depth of talent, but as far as what they were picking. The Predators were like, hey, we're going to pick the next best available player, regardless of position. And I think for the most part, they probably did that. But there were a few picks where I was like, okay, you all saw something very specific from this player, because I don't think most other teams would have said that's the next best player available. The number 2 pick is one for me, Tanner Molendyk. I think maybe he was a little bit of a surprise pick for some people, maybe wouldn't have had him as high. So I think the Predators had a couple of players that they were very, very high on that maybe felt outside of that next best player plan. But when you look at who they got, it's kind of an interesting class. It's an interesting draft class. And I'm not sure that I could kind of summarize this class sort of in one foul swoop. There's a lot of variety in what they ended up going with, I thought.
Yeah, 8 forwards, 2 defensemen, and a goalie. It's funny, we talk about, Barry Trotz really swinging big for that number one center, wanting a guy down the middle they can build around. They chose a lot of centers late in the draft. They did use their second round pick on Felix Nilsson, who, according to Eric Dene, our prospects guy, kind of a decent two-way guy. The way he describes him kind of sounds like Ryan Johansson a little bit.
Yeah.
Which, this week in particular, not exactly sure what to make of that.
Yeah.
And then they had, 3 of their last 5 picks in the draft in the late rounds were center. So maybe just trying to go back end depth a little bit. We heard Barry Trotz. It was the viral quote that, went everywhere on social media. I'm telling my scouts to give me big swings. Give me guys that can get people out of their seats. If we're going to miss on somebody with just, an unbelievable high, once in a lifetime ceiling. You look at this draft class, and is that the vibe you get? Like, do you think there were big swings here? Or do you think this is kind of more play it safe a little bit?
It's interesting because when I hear the term big swings, I tend to think of, like you're talking about, ceiling. Like, what is, maybe their projected ceiling is a little riskier. And I don't necessarily know that that's what it is, but I think they did go a little bit. I think they took some chances on some players, like Felix Nilsson, for one. They had the 46th pick. They traded up to 43. So there is something that they see in him in particular that they like. So I think there are some players where maybe they feel like they see something very specific that they want. I do feel like, and maybe this has been true in other drafts, but it stood out to me. I feel like they did go after players who, at least personality wise, and also maybe style of play, are that get people out of their seats, kind of, the potential. I'm trying to think of like who's some good compare, like maybe Mark Borowiecki. Is Mark Borowiecki's hockey ceiling through the roof? Probably no. But do Nashville Predators fans love Mark Borowiecki and love the way he played here? Yes. Does he kind of bring energy? Does he bring? And so I wonder if maybe they got some of those guys where they went more with that. Not to exclude ceiling. Of course, they're obviously looking for great talent, but I think they took some interesting swings. Would I say big? I don't know. I don't know. How would you evaluate it?
Well, if you're taking big swing, Tanner Molendyk is probably the biggest one that you look at and be like, okay, because that's somebody that a lot of people had maybe as a second rounder. And considering the Predators had, an early-ish second round pick, I know they traded up to get Felix Nilsson, but, this is somebody that maybe they could have gotten, on day 2, but you look at his skill set and you hear what, a lot of people say about him was he's one of the best skating defenders in this draft, and it seems like there's still people trying to figure out his potential because he wasn't on like the top pair. Like he was a second or third pair guy just because Saskatoon, the team he's on, had guys that were older than him, that were higher than him on the depth chart. So this is a guy that's like, you kind of look at his, mechanics and you see like, okay, give him time to put all this together. And maybe this is like a top pair future defenseman, like an actual, Roman Josi type, really good two-way player. That's, that's what that vibe screams to me, is somebody that's like, you haven't put it together yet, which is maybe why you're falling on the draft board a little bit, but we like what you see. You have the tools. And so that to me is the swing. It seems like Kalan Lind, based on what I've seen. Interesting. Yeah, based on what I've seen, people kind of talk about on Twitter a little bit and hearing some of their views, Kalan Lind was a little bit of a big swing, but that's somebody with some upside there.
Mhm.
And it's like you don't have to hit a home run every pick, and like
No.
you don't need to look at every single player that's available and be like, okay, is he gonna be is he gonna be a number one center? Is he going to
Right.
be a number one defenseman? Is he going to be like power? Like you do want to go and get guys that you can see have an NHL career, maybe just as a depth guy or an extra guy. Like you can go and get those guys in the draft, which, Barry Trotz, I think, did for a lot of the last half of the draft. And that's fine. It's just, I think there's like, a couple of people here and there that may be out of place. I would say at the end of the day, Anne, if you look at just the players themselves that Nashville got, I think you would have to be relatively happy with them. I do think there might have been some potential on the board at some of those picks. We talked yesterday about Oliver Moore versus Matthew Wood.
Right.
There are some guys, especially in the second round that, might have had a little bit of higher upside than, like Nilsson and Lind. But, if you're just not giving me the context and giving me this is the list of players Nashville got, I would be like, okay, not like all in, like this is the best draft class ever, but I would be happy with it.
Yeah. And here is where I think the Nashville Predators are right now. Barry Trotz not only had a ton of draft capital, not only does Barry Trotz have a lot of cap space, not only does Barry Trotz have a lot of room to make some big decisions, but Barry Trotz also has a tremendous amount of grace and favor with this fan base. So I think that it would be very difficult for a Nashville Predator fan to look at this draft class and be disappointed. Because I think right now there is a lot of room for Barry Trotz to kind of spread his wings, kind of take this team in a different direction. And with that comes a lot of grace. And with that comes a lot of like, okay, let's see. And so I feel like this was a good time for Barry Trotz and David Poile, of course, to put together maybe a draft class that has a couple of those. Okay, that's probably not the predictable pick. Like this is the time to go ahead and make those moves. And I like it. I think, you know what, let's see what you've got. This is the time to do it. So I think it would be very hard to come away from this and say, look, this was not a great draft for the Predators. I think where they're at and in the transition period that they're in, you can make some of these kind of maybe unpredictable picks and still have a tremendous amount of favor with the fan base. So I like it. Let's see. These are young men. We've got years to see what happens.
The other thing that I think strikes me from this draft, Anne, is that it feels like there's still elements of that Predators identity that's going to be there. We talked, when Barry Trotz, Andrew Brunette came in, we know what the Predators were for years. They're the bullies. They were the hard hitters, the guys that like to drop the gloves. I think under the John Hines era, that got a little bit frustrating when, faster players would just skate right past the people trying to hit them. But so I think a lot of people were like, okay, is this going to be like the younger, faster? Like, are we going to be like the Colorado Avalanche, kind of making it that mold, like maybe a quicker game, maybe some smaller players, but, a little bit more speed and agility. And I think you saw in this draft with some of the players that you got that, there's going to be some more speed, but that physical element is still there too. That kind of sandpaper type play. We saw it with, when we got, it was Jesse Kiskinen.
Yes.
Where he was, talking about, what kind of, who do you like, which player do you like, who do you kind of model your game after? And he, said Matthew Tkachuk and, talked about, his ability to skate, forecheck. He likes to shoot the puck. And, then they ask him about, say, hey, who's the one player you're excited to face? And he said Matthew Tkachuk. And, he said, he looks like a tough guy. Like, let's see how tough he really is. Like that kind of like, I'm ready for the challenge. Like I'm ready to go out there and compete. I'm ready to go like shoulder to shoulder with like the best, most physical guys, in the NHL. And there's a couple that goes guys too. Dylan MacKinnon, defense. He's, I talked about Jordan Tutu. Was one of the Nashville Predators players he most admired, called him nasty, liked his physical play. So I think you're just seeing that, the style of play might change for Nashville a little bit, but there's still going to be a lot of spots that you're going to see that grit and sandpaper still shine through in that Predators team.
Yeah, and I think you see it. We saw some of that even the end of last season. We did focus on these younger players, Luke Evangelista and Juuso Parssinen and Tommy Novak. And we talk about this team needs to get faster. They need to be more offensive. We don't have we have a scoreboard to keep score, a very Trotzism. That's why there's a scoreboard. And I think, we're definitely seeing some of that. But you also saw at the end of last season, and fans responded to this, a little bit of that, like, yeah, I'm young, but I'm here. Was it Luke Evangelista that took out Evgeny Malkin in one of his first games, kind of like, knocked him over. And you have a little bit of that like young swagger. We've seen that already, and fans respond to that. And so I think we saw a little bit more of that with some of these draft picks, that young swagger, that, I'm okay to get out there and get physical. And so I think that's a vibe that the Predators maybe want to build a little bit more of. And I think you're going to see it in things like maybe these players being a little bit more scrappy, a little bit more physical, but I don't necessarily that means to the exclusion of goal scoring. So we saw glimpses of it with some of these young guys. And I think that so appealed to the Predators fan base that some of these new draftees, if they kind of keep that style, keep that attitude and that vibe, when their turn comes, it's going to be a good fit for where the Nashville Predators could be.
Yeah. I think that's the biggest, like, if you're going to ask me to maybe to grade this draft class as a whole, Anne, solid B.
Yes.
Like a solid B. Like, yeah, maybe there was some potential still on the board at some of these picks, but I do think that there are pieces there.
Yes.
And, I look at this lineup, there's literally, conceivably 4 or 5 people that you look at and it's like, okay, maybe you're not like, maybe you're not going to be like all Jack Hughes or players like that. But like 4 or 5 people that you can literally see being like, okay, things go right. You can be like a piece of the Predators use for quite some time.
Right. Yeah. Right. There are individual pieces that may not be your top line stars, but that could really be important pieces in the Predators kind of vibe in not just on ice, but off ice. And Trotz talked about that. We're looking for culture players too. And I think most of that is kind of directed towards free agency, but I think the Predators were really into personalities and vibes too. And I was it Molendyk that said in his conversations with the Predators, he said, look, it was really easy. Like we laughed a lot. Yeah. And so I think, we're going to see kind of a different vibe and I like it.
Yeah. And I'm excited for it. There's some exciting stuff. Free agency starts tomorrow, Anne, as does prospect camp. So still a lot to get to. Real quick, because we're coming to the end of the show, just what do you, and it's 4th of July, so we might not have a show for a couple of days. Real quick, what do you see the Nashville Predators doing at free agency?
I don't see them making a huge splash with a huge signing and bringing in somebody. A, I don't know that there's really that kind of player available for anybody, but B, Barry Trotz has been very upfront. He talked with the media last Monday. They're not looking to sign somebody for 4, 5, 6 years. They're not looking for that. They may reach out and sign some pieces for a couple of years because they need to save spots for these young players that they're developing. So I think where the Predators are you're looking at maybe, I wouldn't be surprised if they make a move, but I don't
Yeah.
think it's going to be a huge move. And I don't think it's going to be a long-term deal. I think you're looking at adding a piece for like maybe a year, maybe two.
Yeah, I think you're going to have a couple of players, couple of signings, maybe
Mhm.
those veteran guys for 1 or 2 year deals, maybe like, sort of a second, third line guy for, maybe a bit of a longer deal at a cheaper term,
Mhm.
depending on how things fall on draft day. But, I don't expect the Predators to be handing out 5-6 year contracts or max guys to guys like Tyler
Right.
Bertuzzi. I think they'll be busy. I do
Mhm.
think there's going to be some players here and there, that would catch the Preds' eye. Not only would help them on the ice, but also wouldn't command a contract term or a contract number that would tie things up for the foreseeable
Right.
future. So
Agree.
I think you're going to see the Predators kick the tires on a lot of guys. We mentioned guys like Gustav Nyquist, Thomas Tatar, somebody that you can maybe get on like 1-2 year deal and just see how things go there. But yeah, I'd expect a not quiet, but not as busy couple of days for the Nashville Predators.
Mhm. Agreed.
Yeah. So yeah, this is going to be an interesting few days for the Nashville Predators free agency. And I know you're going to be at prospects camp.
Yes.
So there's going to be a lot to talk to or a lot to talk about, I should say. So yeah, everybody stay tuned. And where can people find your work?
You can find my work online at insidethepreds.com. You can find me on Twitter at ANK_Mama on Ice.
You can find me at penaltyboxradio.com. Follow me on Twitter at _NSMorgan. That's going to do it for us on today's Locked On Predators podcast. Thank you for making us your first listen today. We will be back next week with all new episodes.